Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Fellowship League once again. I'm yours truly, Carl Abad, and we're going to close this series on how to be a 21st century Christian on this session. And for those who have been following us, and for those who have also been new with us, please continue to stay tuned to this last session because I'll be announcing on our next series for the following month. And before we before we start this wonderful session on diversity, I would like to give first the purpose why we have the Fellowship League. What's the purpose of the Fellowship League? And why am I speaking here right now? You might be wondering, how come the face of Card is always in the screen? Well, the purpose of the Fellowship League is simply to give the truth of the gospel undergirded with love to the seekers. And seekers are people who are committed to answer the deepest questions of life and try to find the meaning of reality and trying to find themselves, their own identity, and their own satisfaction. And of course, our end goal here and our foundation and our center is the cross or the person of Jesus Christ, and that has been always the main goal of the Fellowship League. And we focus on three words mainly: facts, cross, and discourse. And in the previous week, we've discussed with Dr. Mike Laconia on the topic of how to do Christian apologetics and history in the 21st century. And right now, we're going to officially close this two-month series rather, on the topic how to reach out to the Eastern diversity in the 21st century. And I'm going to introduce now our wonderful guest. His name is Mr. Jacob Cheriyan. He is an itinerant speaker and trainer with RZIM India. RZIM stands for Ravi Zacharias International Ministries, one of my favorite organization, actually the most favorite organization in apologetics, with a focus on philosophy, history, psychology, and literature. He speaks in various settings like university campuses, churches, and the corporate world. So I would like to welcome our dear brother here, Mr. Jacob Cheriyan. How are you doing over there?
Thanks, Carl. Thanks so much for inviting me here. I feel really unworthy, especially with the fact that you said that last time it was Dr. Mike Licona who was there, who you interviewed. So it's a big step down from there. But thank you so much, Carl. Thank you for inviting me. I was following, after you mailed me, I've followed the Fellowship League. I've been following what you're doing. And it just takes a lot of courage to do this. There's nobody pushing you guys to do it, but the fact that you're doing it on your own time, on your your own will and your own passion is just great. Keep it up.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Jacob, for that wonderful. Those are very encouraging words for us. I believe the Fellowship League would be grateful to continue this journey, Mr. Jacob, for the glory of God. Mr. Jacob, where are you now in India?
Yeah, I'm in Bangalore. I'm in a place called Bangalore. It's in the southern part of India. I've been born and brought up here, and so this is my home. I wish I can take my camera and pan it around. Opposite here was a university that I studied. It's called SciAx. It teaches theology. Yeah, and yeah, I'm married here in Bangalore, and we just got a baby daughter about 2 weeks back. So that's the phase of life we are in right now.
Well, praise God. I'm so joyful to the Lord that you have that God has blessed you with a wonderful daughter, Sasha, and
Yeah.
I pray that you will have a really wonderful journey ahead with your family. And Mr. Jacob, how is India coping right now with the current pandemic?
I mean, just like how the whole world is coping with it, it's it's one of its kind. But from what I'm seeing, there is a decline in the number of cases from what I'm reading. But statistics now has become just like all about the numbers, and I can't really relate with that. But people are cautious. I can very clearly see that people are cautious. They're taking the necessary precautions, but life has to go on. Things have to open up. People have to do the things that they are called to do. It has hit the lower economic population quite a bit, the migrant workers. And so, but what I'm also glad to see is how the churches are helping out during this time, coming together, banding together, forming a system, helping out places, spreading awareness, spreading information. So as a Christian, it's just a joy to see how churches around the country are coming together, pulling their resources. and going down and helping. I mean, if we are all about spreading the love of Christ, and as a Christian body being a witness for Christ, I think these are great opportunities for us to step up and show that love, that it bursts out of us into our communities. So,
Wow. Yes, Mr. Jacob. Actually, what's going on also there in India is similar also here in the Philippines. Uh, the only issue here in the Philippines is we're number one in terms of most active cases in Southeast Asia. And right now, if in your situation there is hitting the low economic areas there, same here also. We have a 40% rise of unemployment here. And also similar to your migrant workers, we call our migrant workers here OFWs, we call it overseas Philippine workers, and they're suffering as well. And a lot of people are losing their job. We're talking about millions of Filipinos not having jobs, especially our jeepney drivers. Their their jobs are was lost, and they're all they're doing right now is in the streets begging for money, wearing placards. So, but at the same time, the church is doing their best. Our church right now in CCF, we have given to thousands of people equipments on health equipments. We gave them equipments for precautionary measures and safety, and it's same also. Churches are going together and reaching out to more people, and let's really constantly pray. Let's constantly pray for our fellow countrymen that not only they will be safe and that they would hopefully experience a miracle and if they have affected, but also they would know more about who Christ is and that He is the ultimate meaning. It's not flourishing by your own worth, your own actions. It's not what we do. It's actually it's always about Jesus, and that's actually the purpose why we have the church, and that's the purpose why we are here. And I'm just um, affected by what's going on right now, Mr. Jacob, and
yeah.
things are getting worse, not only in the virus but also natural calamities and stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely. I mean, it's like a whole load of things coming together at the same time. You know, it's just like you're wondering what's happening here. Why does so many catastrophic incidents have to come all together at the same time? But like what you are saying, um, in terms of there is a resurgence in people asking questions about ultimate meaning and purpose in life. A lot of us vest our time, energy, resources are thinking in things of this world, and when that is threatened, then people by a very natural instinct look for something beyond this world, because somehow all the hope and meaning that they put onto this world is collapsing. So by a very natural human instinct, people are looking beyond this world. And we as RZIM have got so many invites at this
yeah,
point in time. There's so many people, skeptics and people who had completely negated the idea of a world beyond, is now prodding into it. Is trying to ask questions in that direction. So God is working.
that
As
is
difficult as it is, we always come with the premise that God's love is overwhelming. That He's always working. Whatever He does and whatever He allows, He's always in and through this process. He's working in and through this process. But it also has shown a lot of flaws in our system, in our economic system. Like you're saying, the migrant workers there. The migrant workers here come from small villages and towns to the cities to make a better living and also to send the money back into their villages. But when something like this comes about, they just cut loose, and with nothing, they just send to their homes. Though they've served whichever the hotel or the restaurant or this company for so long, a pandemic like this, there's no backup here. They've sent home, and it's such a difficult situation. I guess after this, my hope is, at least the Christian hope, is always that there is an overturning to suffering. There is a thing. The crucified Jesus is also the resurrected Jesus. That however bad things might seem, it will be overcome by God. There is a resurrection. There's always hope. And the Christian message is always that of hope, that God will come through at the end. But what I hope that happens is we don't come out of this the same. We don't start perpetuating the same systems and keeping and having the same, doing things the same way. That we learn from this, that our empathy, compassion, and care goes beyond ourselves, beyond companies, beyond churches, and so on.
Yes, yes, Mr. Jacob. I like what you said there in the end. There's the uniqueness of the Christian message is hope, and hope is found in the resurrected body of Christ, and that's basically the our goal for this session. And I believe we both come from the Eastern culture, and the Philippines and India are no different. We also focus on family here, and I believe you focus on family. So before we proceed to the main questions on Eastern diversity, Mr. Jacob, how did you? The viewers want to know, how did you become a follower of Jesus, or ever since have you been a follower of Jesus? How did God called you into this wonderful path that He has laid out for you?
Yeah, thanks, Carl. Uh, I always grew up in a Christian family, and so the history of Christianity in India goes all the way back to the disciple Thomas. So the apostle Thomas came to South India, and then he spread Christianity. He landed in Kerala, where I'm from, and he spread Christianity there. And he convert a group of Brahmins got converted to Christianity there. And then so Christianity has a very long history here. It's a 2,000-year-old history. And from as far as I know, my granddad, great granddad, before that, have all been Christian, though very different denomination. Some from the Eastern Orthodox, some from CSI. So they've been very different denominations. So in one sense, there's a huge line of Christianity. But in terms of my life, my dad was an alcoholic, and he recovered from alcoholism. It was after that he got close to Jesus Christ. And then after that, we started going to a Baptist church, primarily because Baptist churches are known for their expository preaching, and my dad wanted to study the Bible and what is there in the Bible, and so we all started going to that church. But there was always a resentment in my heart, because I always felt, okay, I understand that the conversion in my parents are real, but why does me and my brother have to do this, have to go through this church process and do this just because they have undergone something in their lives, And so in some sense, there was always a resentment in my heart towards church, towards people in the church. As to suddenly this has been put on us, this has been forced on us, church has been forced on us, and especially with my family and things like that, suddenly we became very church going boys, church going Christians. And so there was a level of morality and a level of goodness that we had to show because we were from a church and so on. And so that resentment has always been there at the back of my mind. But interestingly, as far as I can remember, as far as I can go back to my childhood, there's always been a voice in my head which says, Jacob, you're mine. I love you, you're mine. And it's a voice that I've always didn't want to hear. It's a voice that I've tried to suppress it. But regardless of it, it was always a voice that echoed in my mind. And then, story after story, I think one of the main parts of my coming to Christ, or my moving or inclining my heart to Christ, has to come from there was a time in my life where I was gambling. A poker was taking on big in where I'm from, in Bangalore. And so I got into a huge muck of gambling. And then at that point in life, I was doing my engineering at that point in time. I was neck deep in debt. And I was trying to figure a way out. Just to keep a long story short, when I was there at that point, I didn't know what to do. One of the rules my dad had given is to always tell the truth, always tell the truth to him. And so I'd also started stealing money from home in order to make up for this debt. And I had stolen from my granddad when he was sleeping. And so I had gone pay the debt, and I lost that also because I tried to double it up, and then I lost that. But finally, it came to a point where I went and told my dad that I'd stolen. My life has become unmanageable, to help me out. And he never, he really understood. at that point in time. He said, I'm saying he didn't condone the action. He said, there are two things that I want you to do. One is cut off your circle cut off this circle. Second is go and tell your granddad what you did. I didn't want to do that, but I did. Finally, I tried to avoid it, but he's like, this is something that you have to do. You've stolen from him. So I went to my granddad and I told him, you know what, I stole this money. And I went, my granddad smiled. He's just looking at me and smiling. I'm like, why, what happened? Why are you smiling? And he's like, I know that you stole that money. I saw you stealing that money, but I didn't say anything because I knew a day will come where you'll come back and tell me the truth. Because you are my grandson, you cannot run away from the truth. And for me, that was a huge incident in my life, because what my granddad's love also showed me was God's love for me. That despite everything that I did, despite me doing everything wrong that I can do intentionally so that I can wanted to be free, wanted to be away from the baggage of what church is putting me, want to be away from the rules that things are what God is putting me in. Despite everything, God still loves me. He sees that I'm walking away from him. He sees that I'm going into my own destruction, but he still loves me and he still calls out to me. He's still bringing me back. And in one sense, my life has never been the same again. After that incident, after that incident with my granddad, there hasn't been a single day where I haven't thought about Christ or the love of Christ. That it's that story of the prodigal son, right? It's a beautiful way in which God is always there for you. No matter what you do, God is always. And that voice in my head, which was always there, I love you, it became much more clearer for me. It became into my conscious thinking. And then after engineering, I said, hey, if this God is real, and I know that he is real because he's always been there. From childhood, he's always been there with me. Then the only thing that I want to do is to find him out, learn more about him. So from there, I joined a theological college, and theology fascinated me. The Bible fascinated me, going deeper into the scriptures, understanding background, understanding meaning, how that meaning applies, understanding missions, it's a church history. It just really fascinated me, and I've been fascinated ever since.
The more I'm fascinated also by what you just shared. I've been I was touched by what you shared about you and your granddad, your grandfather, and I was moved by that actually, because especially when you said you cannot run away from especially what he said to you, you cannot run away from the truth. Wow, I mean that hit me at the
Yeah,
moment, and I was amazed by that um, change. And then from there, what amazes me more is God never left you. He was
yeah,
always there for you. And the more you excelled in your studies, the more you study theology, and theology is good. I mean, the more you got deeper into the Bible, the more you got deeper into the context of scriptures, and you're able to understand uh, how God approaches and what does He want to teach to all of us through the Bible.
yeah,
And and by God's grace, you're now continuing to spread the truth, spread more of the
yeah,
truth of the gospel, and
yeah.
it's such a blessing. And
Yeah. I don't want to like totally romanticize it in the sense of, say, after that incident, there was a huge love for Christ and to do a thing, and which was like bursting out of me. Now, I wouldn't say that perpetually stayed till now. It
mm,
changed, and just like our relationship with anybody goes through phases, goes through different things. So at one point, there was overwhelming sense of emotion, but then later on in my life, like 3 years down, I suddenly found like those emotions were not as strong as it was, but it still never made me doubt God or doubt his presence. It just made me understand, okay, this is where our relationship, this is where my relationship
mm,
is with God. So in one sense, I don't want to give the illusion of a fairy tale story that is your relationship with God and this is how it will be. There is always a fascination with God. Any Christian, there's always, because it's so mysterious, it's so unknown. There's always a fascination. But in terms of what you go through, the journey of life that you go through, the experience that you go through, it takes on many dimensions. It takes on many
Mhm.
layers at that point in time. And so, yeah, just a caveat.
Yes, I like what you said, dimensions and layers. I mean, it's more complex than what we think, in the
That's right.
Christian faith. And with that, Mr. Jacob, a lot of people have been questioning right now because you come from a diverse culture, but you came from a Christian family, and same also with me. I come from a well, I come from a Catholic background, and I became a Christian by questioning and investigation more, understand and being touched by the message of Christ. But how can the church approach to people who ask like this question? If diversity causes confusion, why did it happen? And I mean, if God knew in the first place that if God loves diversity, why did it cause confusion? And He knew in the first place that many people will be scattered and divided because of this. So when I say diversity in terms of religious diversity in the, why is there this various isms and different um, multi lenses of
That's right.
understanding of reality, Mr. Jacob?
That's right. It's a very good question, Carl. Um, in terms of the thing is, people are diverse, right? People are very diverse. They're like, there's so many things that make a person unique. They say a person does not even have a unique fingerprint, they also have a unique tongue print. That way, in the way they speak, there's nobody else who speaks like you, Carl. There's nobody else in the world who has the modulation pauses and things like that. So in that way, each human being is unbelievably unique. And we've all been put in this journey of life here in this world, and we have to form together as communities also. So diversity is one of the most beautiful things in life, in one sense. It's if we were all the same, then we would live an absolutely robotic existence. And any type of tyranny, any type of dictatorship tries to do that, tries to make everyone uniform, tries to make one thing so that there is a system of control. God never works under that system of control. Like you, Carl, your experiences have been so different. You came from a Catholic background, you're from the Philippines, and your family. I'm here. I'm here in India, and I came from the background that I did, and we are so diverse, right? You and me, we are so diverse. Yet, we have mutual respect for each other. We can speak to each other as equal. That I can acknowledge your journey, and you can acknowledge my journey. And so, in that way, diversity is a necessary thing. It's the most beautiful thing. All right. Uh, to be united, to be one does not mean uniformity. We all have to be the same, exact same. Now, the difficulty comes when different people, it's not the difficulty, but a natural part of existence is different people having different worldviews, different ways of thinking about the world, and different civilizations have different ways of thinking of this world. And it has come through time, it has come through history. So I'm a Christian here in India, but the Christian population in India is very small. It's, even though it came 2000 years back, it's less than 3% of a population of 1.3 billion that's Christian. A major chunk of it is what we term as Hindus. But again, when we term them as Hindus, we think they are a uniform group of people, like a monolithic group of people, but they're absolutely not. Within Hinduism, you have people who are atheists. You have agnostic. You have people who worship Shiva. You have people who worship Krishna. You have people who worship millions of God and millions of different worlds. So there's a diversity there. Along with that, you have a huge Muslim population, and many other religions. The Parsis have come here and settled. The Jews have come here and settled. And so there is diversity there. All right. Now, what I ask myself as a Christian is, here I am as a Christian living in an absolutely diverse land. I believe in something very strongly. I believe in the person of Jesus Christ, that Jesus is the one who came to show us who God is, that Jesus is uh, the one through whom we can understand the ultimate meaning and purpose in life, not just the world outside, but me. But I also understand there are many people out here who do not share in my beliefs, who do not look at the world like that. but we still have to coexist together. We still have to live, not just live in such a way, okay, you're there, I'm here, but live in harmony, live in love. And I feel that is exactly what the Christian message is. The Christian message is to love no matter who that other person is, whatever ideology that they have. Sometimes we as Christians think that we have to get that person into our belief system. And I feel what we should do is to be able to articulate what we believe very clearly. And that's what apologetics does. We articulate what we believe in very strongly. So if somebody asks me if I'm sitting with my neighbor or I'm giving a talk, I would articulate very clearly what I believe in. And I want to get into a dialogue, a sincere dialogue with them. Okay, not just say, okay, fine, you believe what you want to believe, I'll just believe what I want to believe, and we'll just, no. Why is it that you believe this? What makes it? And one of the things in diversity is being able to give respect to that person for what their belief is to look at it deeply. Because if societies are coming together and holding belief system, then there is something valuable in that belief system that's holding them together. And that needs to be respected. That does not have to be acknowledged as true and absolute. Okay, you don't have to do that. But there needs to be respect. There needs to be love and what care that is given. So I guess a very important task for us as Christians here in India and also Asia and anywhere, but I know Philippines majority is Christian, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's like 95% Christian population there. I mean,
Yes,
like,
majority of our population are Catholics actually, and
okay.
we can consider them as Christians as well because no matter what the periphery says, but in central, they always put in the idea of the cross and Jesus Christ.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So, but again, there's so much diversity. There's so many denominations.
Yes.
There's so much diversity that is there. So, diversity is a part of life. It is an intrinsic part of life. We cannot do away with diversity. And any person who tries to make everything uniform, it never works because human beings are very complex. They are very complex ways of existing. But the beautiful message of Christ is that we live in a diverse world. We live in a diverse world in love and harmony for the other. That does not mean we have to acknowledge what they're believing is true. There's no necessity for that. But it is to understand that they are human beings, that they go through journeys, that they go through struggles, that they have their belief system, and to engage with it as much as possible. And I feel that's one way to show the message of Christ or to shine the message of Christ is to live that out, uh, to to reflect God's glory into the world. And it is through that beauty that people will join, will look at it like, what is so beautiful about this person? What is this person radiating that is so different from the world that we see outside? That has always been the Christian message. It's N.T. Wright says if we are made in the image of God and if Jesus is the one who reflects who God is, then that needs to be reflected out of our lives. It needs to be reflected in our actions, in our thoughts, in our duties to the nation. And so yeah. Sorry. Coming back to your question, how do we handle diversities? Well, the basic answer is with respect, with humility, with love, and then share. Be convicted of your beliefs and be able to share it, articulate it as clearly as possible.
I see. Yeah, respect is very important, and you also mentioned that diversity is intrinsically beautiful, and that it happens, and there's nothing we can do about that because there's something in the belief systems that makes things really united. That's why it's could be the reason why there's such thing as a diversity because it gives us this respect, importance of social cohesion. Like very important that we have this sense of not actually have to acknowledge the ideas because people tend to connect ideas with themselves, right? I mean, when we disagree with them, they suddenly feel disrespected. But actually, what people or even the church must be challenged right now is uh, there's a separation. We must be willing to challenge our ideas at the same time respecting the person. And that's so far I believe the one of the main issues of how Christians should interact. And with that, Mr. Jacob, you mentioned that we must learn how to articulate Jesus Christ in the field. You cited NT, right? I'm just curious, Mr. Jacob, because the next question is quite relevant because it says here, how is Jesus different among all gods? If we ought to articulate Jesus, uh, what should be our understanding of Jesus first among all diversity for us to
Uh,
articulate? Yeah.
um, uh, just to maybe I should interview you, Carl, because you brought out a very amazing point here
Oh,
about separating ideas from people. And that's such an important thing that we do. That ideas are not people, or the people who have ideas, they're not the same thing. And so we must be able to look into ideas critically, be able to analyze them critically. But that does not mean that we are condemning the person. And that is something that is very prevalent, not just among religious people, but highly within the secular world, that they think their ideas or their belief systems is them. So if we they place their identity on their belief system, and so the minute you touch on that, they can't take it. And so there always has to be a separation where we can critique ideas, we can critique, where we can look into these ideas, but that does not mean that we are condemning or attacking the person in any way. And
yes.
so that's a very important point. Thanks for bringing that out, Carl. In terms of your question about, well, I can tell you why I follow Jesus Christ. Right? Why is Jesus Christ? I have not studied all the religions that are there out there, though I know something about Hinduism because this is where I'm from. It's also my research, and I study Hinduism deeply to understand, to help understand what brought this civilization to these belief systems. Why is it for more than 2,000 years that people are able to hold on to these stories and belief systems? And I'm able to look at it with a lot of respect and a lot of value in that. Um, One of the things that that draws me to Christ is the fact that he was a historical figure, and that's a different facet that you have from many Eastern religious thought. A lot of Eastern religious thought works within the domain of myths and philosophies. Now, not that those things are wrong. Uh, they have absolute value, and in fact, the Bible has a lot of those, stories as well as a deep philosophical nugget. But the Christian revelation is that word has become flesh. That those ideas, that what God is, which can only be articulated. And so religion always tries to move away from the physical world, away from the what uh, transient world or the temporal world, into the world beyond, the world outside senses, and tries to articulate it. So religion, and so all religions are doing that. Hinduism is doing that. It's trying to look at a world beyond the temporary world to the eternal world. And how do we articulate that eternal world into the temporary world? So scholars and thinkers philosophize on it, but most human beings aren't inclined to philosophy, but they are inclined to stories. So then you have stories, which is a way of making these philosophies more accessible to human thinking and human mind. All right, because stories have a way of being able to convey a philosophy without telling it as philosophy. All right, and so in that way, what draws me to Christ, all right, and when you look at it within the context of who Jesus was and within the Jewish world and how he came out of it, it is what John says is that word, okay, that thought of God which is eternal, which is there, okay, which was God in that sense, as much as we can apprehend God, has become flesh, has embodied the human dimension, has come into a human being and has revealed himself into the world in and through a human being, Jesus. And for me, that is the turning point of history. That is the crux of history. If a human being, Jesus Christ, is able to embody who God is able to come down to us in a form that we can understand, then all our search for God all stops and starts at Jesus Christ. Because if we are human beings, then God, if a human being has revealed God to us, then he is the one in and through whom we come to God. And it's not a story. It's not just a nice, fascinating story that, and um, like myths are filled with stories, just stories about what God can look like, what that hero would look like. But the Christian faith is that it was historical, that he lived during the time of Pontius Pilate. He lived during the time of Herod. He walked from Gethsemane. He walked into Galilee, and he was baptized. And so the historicity of that faith, the historical Jesus has huge relevance to me. And in terms of Eastern religions, is very unique. That's number one. Second is, and I don't want to, this is a huge topic, but it's definitely, for me, it was the resurrection. All right. Resurrection is a pinnacle of history. If Jesus resurrected from the dead, then he is the one who is revealing God to us. Because everything in this world, any temporary thing in this world dies. Right, it all dies, it decays, it goes into thing. You and me, Carl, we'll be here hopefully another 60 years, 70 years, and after that you're going to decompose, you're going to die and go into the ground, because any temporal thing will vanish. But if Jesus has resurrected from the dead, then he has broken that into him. And so that's spectacular. The resurrection, the historical resurrection of Jesus is a fascinating concept. It's the most important thing for me. All right, it is. If that is true, and I believe that it is true, and there's absolute historical records to show that it is true, then that is my God. That makes him absolutely unique, and I would hold on to him, and I would speak about him wherever I go. So.
Amazing, Mr. Jacob. You mentioned 2 points. Number one is the historicity of Jesus Christ, and number two is the resurrection. And those are one of the greatest evidence, and also one of the greatest points that that makes Christianity so unique. Is yes, all the Eastern religions, they have myths and stories, but it's like the Christian faith stands alone. That not only it's a story that's amazing and fascinating, but more than that, it's historical. I mean, Jesus really existed, and what he taught was really true, and what he did for us was unimaginable. Like, he died on the cross for humanity, and he rose again on the third day, and because of that resurrection, it became a fuel for the early church to flourish, and here we are, 2,000 years after, still number one as the biggest and largest religion in the world. And it's unbelievable if you look at Christianity. Now, Mr. Jacob, um, going back to what you said earlier about that the church should articulate, uh, there is a need for application here, because yes, we all gain this knowledge. Okay, we found the truth already. But the question here is, in this time of pandemic, relevant to this time, we're in this time of crisis, and I'm not sure what's the status in India also when it comes to religious Hindus there, but what should be the role of the church? What points can you give so that the church will be relevant in this time of crisis in reaching out to that kind of cultural diversity, like different worldviews spreading? What if suddenly, when we get this virus, oh man, what should I do? I mean, I'm an atheist. I believe in different religion. How can my God help me? I mean, but how can, and then a Christian comes in, and then how can the Christian cement, through the Holy Spirit? Of course, it's God who's working through the church. What are the points can you give? Basically, the question is, what are the points can you give to make the role of the church relevant in this time towards in this diverse culture?
Like for me, the role of the church is always evangelism, though it can be construed as sometimes we reduce evangelism to a particular narrow focus. And evangelism is not just that. Evangelism is, how do we spread the love of Christ? How do we give people, how do we point them to the person of Jesus Christ, to the Son of God? And in that sense, the church is that body, it is that established body here on earth that points to Christ, that points to it. So but the way in which it is done, the application is multiple fold. Okay, now I have God has given me the privilege of being able to study theology. I was able to study that for 4 years, and then I was able to go to Oxford and then hone my skills there. And so because God has blessed me with opportunities like that, the way in which I would do that is in my conversations with people, and everyone should be able to do that in whatever level and capacity that they can. Look deeply into people's worldviews, look deeply into their way of thinking, and then be able to engage with it for what it is, not reduce it and then try it to punch it, but then understand it for how profound it is. And these are profound. We will not get anywhere by just making fun of it or mocking it. We have to understand how profound it is and engage with it. And that's one role in which I feel God has called me towards. But that does not necessarily have to mean that that is the church's role. Each church or each person who is part of the church has to be able to define it for itself. With my wife, it is just inviting people home, giving them a good meal, and then being a host in that sense. With my mother, it is what helping other women, speaking to them, counseling them at this point in time, understanding where they are, their heartbreak, and then be able to show them how the love of Christ and how who God is can help them in their particular circumstances and situation. For another person, it might be a political leadership, and how the person of Jesus Christ can radically reframe our way of thinking about the nation and politics and peace and harmony. So each person has to define what that calling is for themselves. But ultimately, the goal is evangelism in a much larger sense than what we narrowly pointed out. It is it is in and through our lives, in and through what we do, we point to God. All right, we point to God. Now, who is that? What does that God look like? And the answer for a Christian is Jesus. It is Jesus. That God is embodied in Jesus. But it's not that there's a story, it's like not everyone is going to take the Bible and read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John to understand Jesus. Okay, the other gospels, it's coming through your life. All right, you reflect who Christ is. And so the role of the church is always in terms of in evangelism. Now, I also believe that we should always be doing that. But especially during these times, during pandemic times, you ask the question, why is it that Jesus was always with sinners, tax collectors, those who were ill, blind, lame, sickness or demon possessed? And I feel there's a very strong reason for that. Because those who go through those situations, like we were discussing earlier, try to look for answers beyond this world, and because when things go well in our life, when most people are very happy, getting a good job, getting a good salary, getting a good family, then everything that they want is there in this world only. I don't want to look. So even if you go and tell them about a world beyond, they'll be like, why do I care about a world beyond? I have everything that I need. I'm happy and content. But it's only when those things are put under threat, okay, that you understand, oh, these are not lasting. They don't last. It's a conclusion that Solomon came to, that no matter what you have, it does not last. And so when these episodes, when the pandemic and things like that puts the whole world in chaos, and so, oh my goodness, we need to there is a human need to anchor ourselves in something deeper than the material world, something more permanent than things in the world. And at those points in time, it becomes very crucial for every Christian to act in a manner that's wise, act in a manner that's outward focused, looking at others. And every Christian needs to do this, in whatever spheres that they can. We are not called to go and evangelize the whole world in that sense. We, each Christian, are called to shine the light of Christ in their situations, in their circumstance, and wherever that has placed you. Carl, you've been given this amazing platform, the Fellowship League, and it's able to reach so many people in and through, and you're using that as a medium. I'm doing that from my organization and also from my locality. Now that we are in a lockdown, my neighbors, the people here around, my watchman, my maid, and so in that sense, we are the duty of the church is to do what they are always called to do, but also be attuned to the fact that this is a great opportunity. These are times when people are looking for something beyond, they're looking for an answer, and they are more uh, receptive to what you have to say. They will listen more carefully to what you have to say than in any other circumstances, than when things are going. So
Wow.
it's yeah.
Yes, Mr. Jacob. I like what you. I completely agree what you said there. It's always been. You have to be wise. The church they have to be wise in and prudent, and rather they should know their ways, consider their ways. I mean, and also common sense. I mean, it doesn't have to be like you have to go out there and preach in this time of pandemic. I mean, it's an instinct, it's an intuition. Like if you need to help people, and welcome them in their house, feed them, give them food. If there are people suffering in the streets, if God calls you to give them what they need, you give them what they need. But it's very. This is the time now, no, for all of us to wake up. I mean, not only intellectual. Again, it's not always have to be intellectual. Sometimes we can help people not by arguments, but simply a pat in the back, simply crying with them, simply treating them as family. I mean, we tend to lose it when we get so submerged into our own idleness, in our own you know um, workaholic stuff. But Mr. Jacob, I want to this is the last actually last part of the question is I want to hear your encouragement for the students. I mean, those who are not yet working. I mean, there's students who are um, they're the next generation. Aside from that, but aside from that, uh, what is your encouragement for those young people who are approaching now to this new age? I mean, uh, what should be the role of the student in this time of crisis? Well, it's general, so both Christian or non-Christian, like alike.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, uh, the role of a student is vital, because they are the ones who form a society after. I mean, they are the future of a nation. They are the future of the world in that sense. I think universities and academia as a whole is undergoing a very tough time. Most students, even Christian students, are coming out of their universities and throwing their religion and throwing God behind, because what they have studied is not able to give them an intellectual framework to understand Christ or to fit Christ into that picture. you know and so the education system, or the way in which they are taught, somehow makes them think that you know science can resolve all our issues, or normal social policies can resolve all our issues. A very I guess a very important duty for us as Christians who are students, who have intellectual capabilities, is to be able to analyze our faith using the tools of whatever we have, using the tools of education, using these tools to be able to understand it deeply for ourselves, and be able to say it in a way that makes rational sense for those around. And I believe only the students are able to do it at this point in time, to able to hold on to Christ strongly. Okay, not put him as compartmentalize it. I'm studying science or history or philosophy, I'm studying that here. Jesus, no, that's my religious thing, I go to church and I do this thing. We as Christians have to be able to, however difficult it is, have to be able to merge everything under Christ. Everything that we do has to be under Christ. So even if you're a student of history, uh, and you as a student will have to understand, how does what theories of history or historiography or looking into history, how does that manifest itself, or how does it how do I relate my understanding of Jesus as a historical figure in my study of history? And every student in their particular discipline has to be able to wrestle with those questions for themselves, wrestle with it as difficult as it is, wrestle with it, bring it together, and then be able to share it, be able to articulate it, be able, because once you wrestle with it, then you embody it, because you've wrestled with it and you've come to a conclusion. Okay, it's difficult. There's and it was. I mean, it's a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing to be able to put your thoughts and your education and then battle it with your religious beliefs and your religious faith. But once you do, then there's a permanent change that happens to you. And then there is a way in which you can share that permanently. Now, I am not able to do that because I'm not a historian like you. I don't study history. I study theology, and so that's my domain, and I have to fight my battles and be able to do it. But um, I think the call for Christian students is to be able to think deeply about these issues, wrestle with these issues, bring them together. However hard, don't put them in different compartments and live happily with the dissonance. Wrestle with it, bring together those who have the capability of doing that, those who are gifted in that. And I feel everybody needs to do that in whatever spheres that they can. But those who have that inclination, those who have that pull should be able to do it to that degree and be able to speak about it. And so, yeah, definitely. But all the other things also apply, Carl. Showing the love of Christ, embodying Christ, living, ultimately it's a life that is lived in Christ. We don't want to emphasize the cognitive dimension above everything else. But we also want to say, as apologists, that the cognitive dimension is very important. And students can do this. Students will be able to wrestle with it, form a cohesion, bring everything under the lordship of Christ, every single thing under the lordship of Christ, and then be able to share that, live that out into the world. So, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Carl, I've been too meta, or I hope I've been clear in my points. I think I'm not going all over the place with my answers.
I know, no, Mr. Jacob, it's actually well said. I like what you said. That very important word, compartmentalize, because even in even in the university where I'm studying in history, there are a lot of compartmentalizing going on also there. Although we do actually, it's also one of the missions that they're trying to make things interdisciplinary. But then, if you look at the accountancy area, if you look at the mathematics, look at the engineering, science. I mean, if you're in that background, like, how is history related to engineering and science in the first place? I mean, mathematics. I mean, what does that got to do with culture and anthropology or archaeology or even sociology or any of the social science fields? But actually, in fact, all of them are interconnected. And
Yeah,
and it's not our it's a wrong role that we're taking ready to compartmentalize it, because we might miss the whole picture. And I've been and every time I talk to people of different backgrounds, I admire their where they're at, because they have a specific important role in the society, not only in the society but also how they apply it in their everyday life. I mean, of course, we don't apply mathematics, but we do know that there is logic in there. I mean,
yeah,
and we cannot deny those things. And and you the way you say it, Mr. Jacob, is of an intellectual way that and it's relevant because a lot of students right now are becoming intellectual. I mean, we're in the information age and we're absorbing more information than we can talk. So I believe it's necessary that that what students ought to do is they should be um, because there's are two extremes. They compartmentalize themselves and then they're close minded, and then they open mind them. They're open minded, but they tend to be so open minded to the point wherein their brains fall off. You know, like what J.K. Chesterton said. I mean they're too open minded already to the point that they would. Yeah, sorry for the term. I'm like they believe whatever they want to hear. Like that's already another extreme there. But actually, it has to be. They should
yeah,
know. All students, they should know how to balance these things.
yeah, yeah,
And it's like what I see so far in my observation. It just based on my observation and my experience also in history. Because I admire, you mentioned theories of history. I love theories. I love listening to and I love in our history department in our university, uh, we have this case study activities, and then we present them in class, and then we present what this case study tells us. I mean, what theory, what methodology did they use? if you look at each case, they use different methodologies, but they all work. And so it's same also with how the church should reach out to the people. They have different methodologies, and we should be wise on how to use them and how to approach them. And history, in fact, is one of the most open fields. That's why I pick history, because not only it studies the history of science or the history of mathematics as well, and psychology and everything. It studies about history of it's a story of mankind basically, and how it applies to us. And one historian said that a historian without the facts is meaningless. I mean, what's and vice versa as well. I mean, uh, the beauty of history, truth is also necessary. Truth is the end goal. And I'm so sad that people hate history also, because they think history is all about reading and about
Yeah.
memorization. But it's one part of that, yeah. But it's more than that. It's actually discovering who we are. What is our identity? I mean, who were we before? And also, like what you in your background, sir, you love church history as well. Exactly, it's also related to this. So, students must be aware of that even though they're in mathematics and engineering or science, they also need history. They also need sociology, because without sociology, how can we interact with each other? Without psychology, what's the mind for? I mean, yes, and of course, if there's no social working and applied social science, I mean, how can we be able to help one another in this pandemic? Like, how can we socialize with different people? I mean, uh that's why I completely agree with what you said, Mr. Jacob, that
Thank
diversity
you.
is diversity. It always goes back to the topic again. Diversity is beautiful, but then what makes Christianity so unique is that it's like we can summarize it in one statement. Like, Christianity is the most diverse worldview. That even though it's exclusive in Jesus, wherever you come from, whatever culture you come from, Jesus welcomes you into his family, and he will use you, whatever method you use, to spread the gospel. And I mean, this is what a great way to end this wonderful session. And Mr. Jacob, the viewers would want to hear your closing remarks. I mean, I want to hear your closing remarks, not only for the Christians but also for those who are seekers. I mean, they're in different worldviews, and whether they're an atheist or Hindu or Buddhist. What is your encouragement for both of these two groups?
First, let me tell you, Carl, I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed your views, just listening to your views. I feel you're a textbook example of what we Christians need to be. The fact that you're thinking through these things, like I'm saying a lot of these things in theory, and then suddenly you're saying what you are doing. I'm like, hey, man. So in that way, this is thank you so much for this invite, and thank you for us having this conversation. I guess one of the things that we can do, and I don't want to, I don't like giving a formula out there, what people need to do. But if there is something that we can do, it is to be who we are in Christ. Be real. All right. And I guess that is one thing that we are trying to do here in our conversation with each other. We don't want to showcase anything more than what we are, or try to put up an image, or to show that we are very holy devotees of Jesus Christ. Nothing like that. We are to men who love God, who love Christ, and want to live him out. And we are having an honest conversation about that. Because ultimately, no matter what you say, genuineness and genuinity can easily be discerned by a person. All right? They can easily see how genuine you are. You can fake it to a particular extent, but you can't fake it for long. And I think ultimately what Christ wants us to be is to be real people, is to be real in the sense of that, yeah, we love Christ, we are given our lives to him, but we are living this journey, and it's difficult. It's difficult. There's hardships here. Just because we are Christian doesn't mean everything is smooth sail. We struggle. We have our own issues. We are thinking through so many issues, but we are thinking it together as a community. And that's the beauty about Christians. It's the beauty of a Christian community. We have to be able to use it. One of the things that our world pushes us is to absolute individuality. That you are an individual, you're an absolute free thinker, just go on your thing. And it's true, we are individuals, we are free thinkers, just as you are an individual, I'm an individual. But as Christians, we are called to be together as a community. And we will wrestle with these ideas and we will think together as a community. And so my first thing for Christians is to be able to look for communities, especially whichever local church, that is your first and foremost community that you will that is where God has put you. Be faithful to that community. Wrestle with these ideas in and through these communities, and then also look at the wider Christian wider Christian circle, like what you're doing, interviewing people who have thought through these issues. Listen to them and then move that together. In terms of seekers, those who are seeking, if there's a person who's seeking in this video, I, as a Christian, would definitely point to the person of Jesus Christ. And I would want that seeker to investigate the person of Jesus Christ. I'm not an expert in world religions and every other worldview out there, but I'm a believer of Christ. And I know what it means to live a life of fullness and joy and happiness and make meaning and sense of this life in and through the person of Jesus Christ. So I would encourage that person to explore Christ in whichever way. The Gospels are a best place to start. C.S. Lewis was someone who radically changed my thoughts, as it has changed every apologist out there. Ravi Zacharias, whose organization that I work for, who's been able to articulate the Christian faith in a way that is unparalleled in the 21st century. And so there's so many voices out there. And so we as Christians we should not just be mimics or just try and copy another voice. I think each Christian has to be original in the way in which they present Christ, in which they show their love of Christ, because that's how God has made us. God has made us unique and original. And so we are diverse, and so we accept each other Christians for their diversity, but we are united. And what unites us ultimately is our love for Jesus. That's all. I feel underlying, that's all that unites us, our Christians, our love for Christ. Yes, within that, there might be certain doctrinal differences that people might have. There might be different opinions on certain things, what predestination is, what Calvinism is. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. But what should ultimately unite us is our love and devotion for Christ, that we are his soldiers, that we live for him, that we reflect him in and through our lives. And so, yeah, that's a long closing remark.
And amazing, Mr. Jake. What a way to end this wonderful series on how to be a 21st century Christian. We have had these interviews from all the way from being a Christian artist to how to be a Christian in the corporate world, and also how to be a Christian youth in this time of need, and also reaching out to the secular 21st century, all the way to doing Christian apologetics and history in the 21st century, and now here diversity. And what's common in all of those interviews we've had since last month, it always points back to the person of Jesus Christ, and it's amazing that it always goes back to him. Thank you very much, Mr. Jacob, for being with us. The Fellowship League is honored and happy that you are here with us, and we will continue to pray for you, brother, and your family and your ministry and RZIM. And I would love to work there someday. Man, I mean, it's always been in my blood to to reach out to in that organization. Lord willing, Lord willing. But uh, um, catch our next series, dear viewers. We'll be starting our next series on 2020. Where are you, God? That's our next series. 2020. Where are you, God? And our colleague Aaron Daniel C will be back by next month. He's going to preside on the whole series on September, and I'm gonna lay low for a while, and I have to prioritize some things. But it's a wonderful journey in this series. Thank you, viewers, for being with us. Thank you, viewers, for supporting us, and we hope that you guys have been encouraged by this wonderful session. With that, please continue to like, follow, and share our Facebook page, the Fellowship League. We focus on 3 words. Again, facts, cross, and discourse. And also, subscribe to our YouTube channel, the same name, the Fellowship League. And please click the bell button also and share it also to your wonderful family, loved ones, and friends as well. See you guys on the month of September. Please catch our Sunday hangout and also our reflections and sharings and break time with Alec next week. This week, our colleague Alec is unable to do his break time because of commitments. So we hope to see him. We hope to hear from him again next week. And back up for our Sunday hangout. If in case we're not able to continue our Sunday hangout, we'll just share some reflections for you guys. Thank you guys for listening. Mr. Jacob, thank you very, very much. Again, you're our dear brother in Christ, and we'll continue to pray for you, brother.
Thanks.
Thank you, dear viewers. And with that, God bless and God first, and see you again next time.